Hi everybody, I'm going to show you how to use grid drawing today to your advantage to draw things that are pretty complicated that maybe you wouldn't feel normally you're able to draw, like a complex landscape, a building, or even something like your pet. So previously in our other videos we talked about how you can grid off your picture, which in this case mine is a square, and then the image that we're working on, we're transferring it also into a square, and there's a light grid drawn onto this as well. So before we can get to any of the details or the shading in the picture, we have to get the image drawn on there. So I'm going to use this one today, and I have my grid paper right next to it where I'm going to transfer it. So the whole point of the grid drawing is to break down your image into smaller chunks, so you're just focusing on one piece at a time and where it would be transferred on your paper. So in this case, I'm going to choose what I think is a pretty simple box to start with. I'm not picking my most challenging ones. Instead, I'm going to start with this one here because I see one important line that I really need to transfer in this box, and then maybe I'll make a mark or two to show where some of the shadows are. But there's really just a tiny bit that I'm going to be transferring. So I've picked that box. It's the bottom left box. So now, just to help me focus a little bit more, I'm actually going to cover up the other things in the picture so that I can't even get distracted by them. And I'm also doing this on my white paper where I'm going to be transferring it. And just so you guys can see a little bit better, I'm going to try and move them really close to one another so that we can just focus on those two elements. Here we go. All right, so I have my picture and then I have where I'm going to be drawing it. All right, so I'm looking at this line first. I notice that where it touches the edge of my picture, it's about halfway from top to bottom. Okay, so if I come over here, I've kind of marked here where halfway from top to bottom is. I know that is where it should start. Now if I look where it is up here, where the line would end, I see it's not quite halfway, it's a little bit more to the right. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to find that halfway point and then just move slightly to the right. Okay, so now I could just very lightly, because remember this is just an initial drawing, we're not trying to draw anything really bold, I'm just going to connect those two dots. And I'll do it a little bit darker just so you guys can see a little better. All right, now a good way to check to make sure that that's in the right spot, I'm going to put my pencil right on that line that I just drew in the same angle. Then I'm going to carry it over and I'm going to set it right over the angle that I have in my picture. And I see them as the same. If it was like this and then like this, that wouldn't work. But in this case, they are the same angle. From there, I can start to look at other things in the box. Like for instance, I see this line that almost goes straight across, right? But it's got a little bit of a downward slant. And I see it ends on this side just slightly above the halfway mark. So I'm just going to mark the halfway mark in the box just for my own knowledge. Then I'm going to make another mark where that shadow would end. And I know that there's going to be a just slightly slanted line that comes across. Once again, I can check it, make sure I'm in the right spot. And then I can also look at the other side where this second shadow begins, and I see that is almost a quarter of the way up the box. So if this is my halfway point, I see this is just slightly less than that. So I'm just going to make another mark and kind of connect back. So you can do this for as many or as few pieces in the box as you want, but it's just all about kind of looking at where you see something hitting in the box and then transferring it into the other box. So once you get your basics done in that one box, which you can see here, I can then move on to another box. Like maybe I want to move up to the next box. Now I have two pieces of information I can work from. I have what I see in this box, and then I also see what would connect down here. So if I was working on putting maybe this mark in, which to me looks just to the left of the halfway point in the box, I should see that, so if this is our halfway point, I should see it lining up with the line below. So in this case, I actually think my line's a little bit off, so I need to move it back some more. And I just gained some information for what's going on in both boxes. So you kind of work your way up to the more difficult things, the more of these more simple ones that you find first, the easier it'll be when you get to the more challenging ones. And I can show you more tricks. Like for instance, if I want to, if there's a really complicated box, like let's say this box, which would be right here, I can actually find the halfway point and make a smaller grid inside. So if I really need to, I could make even more detail, and I could do the same thing on my picture, and that way I can break it down into smaller and smaller boxes when I'm transferring. All right, so that's the grid technique, the basics of it. Take your time, keep your pencil lines light, and keep rechecking as you go.